Today we're going to discuss some statistical measures of center and spread. And these measures are intended for a list of numerical data only. The measures of center we're going to cover are mean, median, and mode. And we're going to start with mean. Mean is the mathematical middle of our list of data. Mean is sometimes referred to as average, and I'm sure you've heard that before. Average salary, average fuel economy. Average is used all over the place. We find the mean or average by adding all the data values in our list, then dividing their sum by the number of values we have. So to show you mean, first we need some data to work with, and we found a list of 15 different test scores from a single class. Now we can go ahead and crunch our numbers. The mean for these test scores, again, are found by adding all the test scores together, and since there's 15 of them, we're going to then divide that sum by 15. Be cautious when using a calculator. You either need to put parentheses around the entire sum and then divide by 15, or you can add all of our test scores together and then hit enter or equal before dividing by 15. When you do that in the correct order, we get 77.46 with the 6 repeating forever, and I'm going to round to the nearest tenth and say we have a mean of 77.5. To find out how accurate our mean is, we're going to look at a little more data. If you look carefully, 9 out of the 15 test scores are actually above 77.5, which leaves only 6 test scores that are less than 77.5. My question for you, and we're not going to answer this yet, is how good is this a measure of center? Is 77.5 the actual middle of our list of test scores? Well, 9 versus 6 test scores, maybe not quite the middle. And that brings us to our next definition, outlier. An outlier is a value that's far outside the typical range of values in a data set. Mean is highly affected by outliers. Mean is our only measure of center that's affected by outliers, but it's affected so much so that often mean is found with the outliers included and then without the outliers. Let me show you what that does. Our mean of 77.5 is considered with an outlier because there's an actual outlier in our list of data. If you look at the test scores, we have a perfect test score of 100. We have a few in the 90s, some in the 80s and 70s and 60s, and even one in the high 50s. But there's one test score that's pretty far outside that range, and that's the 36. I don't have any other test scores in the 30s or 40s or even the low 50s. And that makes 36 a pretty big outlier. So to find a more accurate mean, we can actually remove the 36 from our list. And that leaves me with only 14 test scores to find the mean of. So I'm going to add them together and divide by 14 this time, and I get a new mean of 80.4. It's a little different than our 77.5. Statistically, it's very different because now 8 out of the 15 test scores are above 80.4 and 7 out of the 15 scores are below. So it's a slightly better measure of middle for our list. This is why sometimes in class, when you have a student who misses a test or scores very poorly on a test and everybody else does okay, sometimes a teacher will remove those very lowest test scores or the zeros before they give you the average test score of a class. It's the same reason why You might remove the CEO's salary before you find the average salary for a company, because chances are they make a whole lot more than everybody else. Next, let's talk about median. Where mean was the mathematical middle, median is the actual middle of our list of data. And median is found by putting all the values in numerical order, least to greatest, then finding the very middle term. So we're going to find median for our same list of test scores. And obviously these test scores are not in any kind of numerical order, so we need to fix that. We need to make sure that this is in order least to greatest, so we're going to put 36, then 56, then 64, and so on. We need to make sure that when we're done putting these in numerical order, we still have 15 test scores. Be really careful that you haven't missed any when you're putting them in order. Once that's done, we can find the median. One way to find the median is simply to start crossing off values on either end of our list until you make it to the very middle. Another way is to say, hey, we have 15 test scores. Half of 15 is 7.5. So I'm going to count in 7 test scores from either side, and I'm going to end up with one test score in the very middle, and that's going to be 81. So 81 is our median. The best part about median is it's guaranteed to be the very middle of the class, or middle of your list. Half of the test scores are going to be above 81 and half of the test scores are going to be below. Guaranteed. Now we were very fortunate because we had an odd number of values in our list. But occasionally, of course, you're going to have an even number of values. In that case, when you count in from either side, you're going to end up with 2 values in the middle of your list. You cannot have more than one median, so to find the median in that case, we're going to average those 2 middle values. Add them together and divide by 2, and that's going to give you your actual median. Now on to mode, which tells us the most common value in your list, or in other words, which number occurs more often than any other. So when we look at the mode for our test data, I'm going to leave those numbers in numerical order because that's going to make it much easier to find mode. As I go through this list, I can see that every number is listed only once until I get to 92. It's the only value that's written more than once. That makes 92 our mode. Sometimes you'll have numbers that are listed twice and some that are listed 3 times, and then one maybe that's listed 5 times. That one that would be listed 5 times would be your mode because it's written more often than any other number. There is a great debate that happens in the mathematical community, however, that you need to be aware of because it will affect you in the long run. There are some that say if there's more than one number that occurs most often, for instance, let's say I have 2 70s. Let's put in another 70 here. If I have 2 70s and 2 92s, some people say, let them both be modes. My mode would be 70 and 92. But there are some who say, but that means there's not one single number that occurs most often. Hence, there is no mode. And this debate has gone on for a really long time, and no one has really said which is correct and which isn't. So it totally will depend on the context and the author who writes your assignment or your test. So for our purposes today, we're going to say that 70 and 92 can both be modes, and that's okay. But just know that occasionally you'll see a term that says no mode. Now when we compare the three, these three values are very, very different. And since they're all considered measures of center, we need to kind of make sure that we know the difference between the three. Mean or average is a comparison with all scores and very highly affected by any outliers that may occur. The median is your guaranteed halfway mark, 50% above and 50% below. Mode, however, I don't think that's a very good measure of center because it simply tells you which numbers occur most often. Know the difference between the three, and you definitely need to know how to calculate all three before you finish today. When we talk about measures of spread, the most common one you hear is range. Range is the difference between the lowest and the highest value in a list of data. Standard deviation and interquartile range are also measures of spread, but we're going to cover those in later videos. To find the range of our test data, I'm going to leave this data in numerical order because then it's very easy to find the highest and the lowest value. To find the range, you simply subtract the lowest from the highest, and I get a range of 64. That means that we have a spread of 64 points from our lowest score to our highest. That's going to wrap it up for today. Make sure you know how to calculate mean, median, mode, and range. And for now, I'm going to wish you a great day, and I'll see you next time.